This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanaoutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to Downrigger at montanaoutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Thank you so much, Manny, for that great introduction, as you always do each week. And as he said, I am Downrigger Dale with the Montana Outdoor Radio Show and, of course, the podcast, the Montana Outdoor Podcast you're listening to. Speaking of the radio show, don't forget we do have that show. I know we've got so many new podcast listeners from not just Montana, but all around the world. So some of you may not be aware of our statewide broadcast that we do. This is heard every Saturday morning live from 6 in the morning Mountain Time to 8 in the morning. And that's on 30 fantastic radio stations all across the state of Montana. It covers about 80 cities. And then on MontanaOutdoor.com. So you listeners from outside of the state that can't get Montana radio stations, you can listen to us online at MontanaOutdoor.com. Or you can listen to one of those great radio stations there, too. And on MontanaOutdoor.com, you'll also get more links to this podcast and that. On the podcast today, we're talking with Steve Darlinton. He is with the Bureau of Reclamation. He's based out of Billings. And the reason we've got them on is there are several reservoirs, and you'll find out which ones here in the state, that the Bureau of Reclamation manages. And there's, various projects that have been going on with those. And we've gotten a lot of emails from you folks saying, hey, what's going on with this one or that one, especially the folks that are asking about Fresno Reservoir and what's happening there. There's been quite a few changes and a pretty major project going. So Steve's going to get into that in detail. Now, I will leave some links right there in the podcast description. When you found this podcast, you saw a description about it towards the bottom. There are links there, and you can click on those after you're done listening and get more information and look at it. Steve Darlington, welcome to the program, and thank you so much for joining me today. Tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Steve Darlington. I'm a project manager for Bureau of Reclamation. Been working here for 15 years or so. Primarily focused on the Highline, the bigger projects, so Fresno, Nelson, and then over near Glacier, St. Mary. And then, I've lived in Montana my entire life, other than a small stint in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And
And the Bureau,
enjoy it.
The Bureau of Reclamation is a federal agency. Now, do you guys kind of tie in with the state as well? Do you work with the state, or is everything just federal?
Yeah, we work with the state, but primarily our facilities are managed through the Department of Interior by us. Yep.
All right. Well, tell us a bit about the projects that the Bureau, the dams, the reservoirs, that sort of stuff that the Bureau of Reclamation deals with in the state of Montana.
Yeah. So for our office out of Billings, we're only east of the divide. So we don't work with like Hungry Horse or any of those projects on the west side. Our primary projects are kind of the high hazard dams. So that's Yellowtail, Clark Canyon, Canyon Ferry, Bunch on the Sun, Gibson, Willow Creek, Fishkin, and then Tiber, Fresno, and Nelson. And then also, all the irrigation projects, whether that's like intake diversion dam or some of those down there. And all of them are either operated and maintained by our staff, reclamation staff, or by our operating partners, which are usually the irrigation districts.
Uh-huh. And so what kind of things do you guys do? So you maintain the dams, that sort of stuff, make sure that everything's intact and working. Maybe give us an example of some of the projects that you guys work on.
Yeah, so we primarily focus when it comes to the dams and the reservoirs, making sure that the dams are operated safely, maintained properly, and don't pose a risk to the public. And then we also do a fair amount of rec. Canyon Ferry is a good example as far as a pretty heavy rec presence besides the dam operators.
When you say rec, are you saying recreation? Is that what you
recreation?
Mean?
Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
And some of the projects, like Canyon Ferry, actually is authorized to do recreation for us to manage recreation, where others, like a Tiber, for example, it never got authorized for recreation. So we can only do the bare minimum. So that's why when you go to Canyon Ferry, you see these pretty nice facilities. And then you go to Tiber, and they're just quite a bit less, just because we don't have the authorized funding to do recreation there. So it's there's an official word for it, but I'm going to call it kind of the bare minimum for recreation management. Yep.
Okay, but like at Tiber, there is a campground and that sort of stuff. So is that like leased out to obviously there's folks that run that campground. Ruan there is who we always talk to on the Montana Outdoor Radio Show, get fishing reports. So do you guys then lease that out, or is that through a different agency?
Yeah, we lease out like the marinas,
right,
and stuff like that. But our staff actually does the other maintenance, and they do a great job. Like at VFW or Sanford, which is down below Tiber, that's all done by our staff.
Oh, yep. Okay.
And they do a really good job.
And then on Canyon Ferry, you guys actually then manage some of those recreation areas as well?
And there's partners.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, marinas and whatnot that are also doing some of that as well.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's start with, since we're talking about Canyon Ferry right now, let's start with that. Are there any ongoing projects right now with Canyon Ferry? Do you have anything coming up that you guys are going to be working on?
Yeah, the big one at Canyon Ferry is the power plant rewind. That facility has operated the same since when it was built in 1954 or something like that. So that'll be the big project coming up at Canyon Ferry. It's basically just trying to make the turbines more efficient because they've worn and lost some of their efficiency. So,
and do you guys actually operate the power plant, or is that
we do?
Through?
Yep.
Okay, and where does that power mainly go?
Well, it goes to WAPA, which is the Western Area Power Authority.
Okay,
and then it's where it's wheeled. That's outside of my wheelhouse. I'm sure someone knows where it goes, but I do not. No.
Mm-hmm. And so, was that the primary reason for Canyon Ferry, was to generate power, or was it also for flood control, things like that?
Yeah, it's a mix of that. I know it has flood control, power, some irrigation, but those are the primary purposes. I don't know all of the authorized purposes for Canyon Ferry. I definitely, but that's the stuff we really focus on.
Now, for Canyon Ferry, then this project that you've got coming up, will that affect water levels, irrigation, and of course recreation at all?
It shouldn't. Nope. There'll be some differences on which gates are being released and whatnot as they work on various turbines, but it shouldn't impact the reservoir recreation. Nope.
Okay. And when does that get underway?
That is a good question. I know it starts here soon, and those are huge projects. When you're talking rewinds, they're multi-year projects.
So they've got to replace the actual turbines that spin the power
and the windings and everything
wow.
that is associated with that. Yep, they're big projects. They're pretty neat.
Okay, so moving from Canyon Ferry, what are the next project that you can tell us about?
Well, I mean the big one's Fresno that we're working on right now.
And that's one that we get the most questions about. So maybe start there in Fresno with what that project entails and at what stage it's at now.
Yeah, so Fresno. It was built in the 1930s, and it was built, we call it homogeneous, but it's basically just one type of material. They just built and compacted with one type of material. They built it within the Milk River channel. So the center portion of the dam has actually settled upwards of 10 feet.
Wow.
Which is significant. It's the second most of any of our facilities in reclamation. And the only other one that beats it is a dam that they've built in the Great Salt Lake. So it's a lot of settlement. The concern with that is that the river portion of the dam settled that much, but the abutments that are founded on the sandstone, they did not. So you got that part of the dam that's sitting on the sandstone that didn't settle at all. Then the center portion that settled 10 feet. We've rebuilt that crest a couple of times to bring it back up to the original design elevation. But we're worried about cracking within the dam because, soil just doesn't hold tension. So that's the concern. And there's a pretty large population downstream with Havre as the primary one, and then Chinook downstream. So that's the purpose of it, is to
make sure
try to mitigate
folks in Chinook and Havre aren't swimming.
Yep, correct.
And that's an earth dam, correct?
It is. Yep.
Okay. So now, how do you go about fixing that? I mean, that sounds like a major project.
It is. It's a big one. So what we primarily are doing, there's a couple of options. The one we selected is a sand and gravel filter placed directly on the downstream face all the way to the foundation, and then a tow drain at the end. So that sand and gravel filter will capture any water that potentially is coming through the dam through those cracks and just safely transmit it back down to the river. And then on top of the sand and gravel, we just put a bunch of material to prevent blowout, so that if a fair amount of water is coming through, that sand and material stay in place, and we don't get the dam to blow out that way also. So it's a substantial project, and it's a lot. I mean, we're talking between sand and gravel, it's 140,000 cubic yards of material.
Ooh.
So it's, whatever that is, depending on the size of the truck, 4,000 to 6,000 trucks.
Wow.
coming from pits just outside of Havre. So.
Man, so that's huge. So when you talk about the center part of the dam settling 10 feet, how long did it take it to settle that much?
Yeah, so it did it pretty quickly. Right off the bat, there was a lot, obviously, because when we built the dam, we added a bunch of weight to this foundation that was compressible. So this, right away, it settled quite a bit. And then it continued until about the late 80s, and it's really, really slowed down since we've kind of hit the equilibrium of settlement. So
as far as it would go. So in the 30s, you had this, it got put in. Then, of course, with all the weight, it settles pretty quick, and then it's just been inching and inching down.
Correct.
So now that is affected as this work has gone on. That's affected water levels in that by quite a bit, hasn't it?
Not yet, but it will.
Okay.
Yep. So right now, Fresno's pretty low right now, but that's primarily due to irrigation and drought. It is not associated with the project.
Yeah, because Fresno is the main purpose of that is for irrigation, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. With incidental benefits for flood control and fish and wildlife.
Okay. So, obviously that area had bad drought for a number of years. Then you had, as farmers got to water their crops, and that draws it down. So where is that level at now? About how far below full pool is it?
It's 23 feet below full pool right now.
Okay.
It's it's definitely lower than normal. Normally we're maybe 7 feet higher or so.
Yeah.
In that 15 feet below, which is pretty normal for most of our reservoirs. As we enter winter, and we try to make space for the upcoming season.
So as this project goes on, when will that drawdown start to happen, where it's going to go way down?
Yeah, so we have to have it down to elevation 2555. So that's 20 feet below full pool on August 15th next year.
Okay.
That is based on the last few drought years. That's actually about where we've been recently.
Okay.
But it is slightly lower than maybe the 30-year average. But we do typically hit that 2555 at some point.
So will that be a pretty gradual thing throughout the spring and summer then, or?
Yep. Okay. We'll fill it up or try to fill it up based on how we normally operate this spring, and then we'll release water for irrigation as we normally do, and then if we get close to that August 15th and we're still a little full, we're going to have to just dump some water.
Okay.
And there's a good reason for it. So, we're building this sand and gravel filter on the dam, but as we get close to the spillway, we can't we didn't have the structural strength in the walls to continue to add all that additional weight. So we're digging way down in to the dam. The rest of it, we're not digging into the dam at all. We're just putting it on the downstream phase. This one, we have to dig in quite a ways. We're going 8 feet into the crest.
Oh, boy.
So the concern, obviously, is we're going to have a compromised dam during that construction period, and we can't have a full reservoir on that compromised dam.
Yeah, it'd be just too much force on it. Yeah.
Yep. And it's just too much risk.
So as far as for folks that, of course, with the Montana Outdoor podcast here, we're dealing with sportsmen, people that love to get out on Fresno and fish and all that. How will that affect them? Are we going to see some issues as far as boat ramp availability, things like that? Yeah,
boat ramp, maybe a little bit. It for the most part, it'll be okay. The big one is just going to be, lowering that water level down to that at the deepest points, 25 feet left in the reservoir. It's definitely going to limit where the fish can go and, where the water is. So that'll be the big one. And then, the real concern is we keep it at 25-55 or probably go a little below. And try to, because we have to keep, I think it's like 16,000 acre feet through the winter for the municipalities. So Havre, Chinook, Harlem, they get their water all winter. But anyways, by lowering it as much as we will, the next year is the one that, is the real concern, that if we have another drought year, we won't, it's going to take us a while to catch back up.
Right. Yeah. And that was one of the concerns that I got from from one of our podcast and radio listeners was, okay, what happens if you had to make this big drawdown? Now what happens if not much water's coming in? Now, is that something you work with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and fish biologists to kind of figure what the plan is? Or I guess there's not a lot they could do, is there?
Yeah, that we do. So we go and participate with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks at their annual meeting in April to talk about Fresno. But in general, because it's a primarily irrigation project, that's the primary purpose. So,
Yeah.
If that scenario happens, we're going to try to add as much water to the system for irrigation as possible, which obviously will impact the fishery.
So, Steve, this was created, Fresno was created for irrigation, getting water to municipalities and that. Recreation kind of came as a wonderful side benefit to it. But your focus, the stated purpose, I don't know the exact terminology there, but that's what Bureau of Reclamation has to concentrate on and do. That's the service you're charged with providing. So when projects like this happen or other things that may affect recreation, and fishermen like myself say, hey, wait a minute, you're messing with my favorite fishing spot. How much consideration can you take in, or do you take in to try to strike a little balance and help us annoying fishermen out every now and then?
We definitely try, so as we lower the reservoir for irrigation, one of the important parts about Fresno and the milk is that our primary water source, because the milk actually dries up naturally 6 out of every 10 years.
Oh.
So the primary water source is actually coming out of Glacier National Park and going through a canal across the divide in what we call the St. Mary Canal.
Wow. Okay.
And so one of the things we can do, and we try to do, is as we lower Fresno for irrigation, we try to save some water in the St. Mary side so that we can continue to deliver that water and bring Fresno back up prior to, winter shutdown. But it all depends on how much water we got in the Lake Sherburne side and when we get froze out, because we get froze out pretty quick up there. So
wow, that I guess I should have known that, but I had no idea that there's a canal system gets it over the divide and into there. So wow, I had no idea. So
yeah, it's a pretty spectacular project, especially it was authorized in 1905, so it was one of the first 5 projects authorized by Bureau of Reclamation.
Wow,
and it was to try to get people to settle in the Milk River Valley by supplementing that water supply and making it more stable.
Huh. So basically, you've got a kind of much more water-rich environment on the west side. So they said back in 2005 or whatever, hey, we need to get more people over to that area and settle and farm and do that. So let's find a way to get that over. That's amazing. That must have been a monumental project.
It is, and it was. It was, especially horse-drawn carts and all that. It was a pretty amazing feat.
Yeah, it wasn't like they had D9 cats and stuff back in those days.
No,
wow.
They did some things that are pretty funny nowadays. Building siphons out of wood or things like that were or flumes out of wood that we just don't do anymore. Now it's all steel and plastic. But
so that has to be a major deal to try to maintain all that. I imagine it was huge, just replacing all that old stuff and bringing it up to date over year after year and stuff like that. That is amazing. I had no idea. So
yeah.
So when say FWP and others say, "Hey, we got a serious issue with fish population. We need to watch this water level, all that," then you guys can say, "Yeah, okay, most of it needs to be handled for irrigation and stuff, but yeah, let us see what we can do." So you try to accommodate as you can.
We do. We definitely try. Again, the way that just these authorizations work, the irrigators pay the majority of the costs for the maintenance of Fresno, and even more on St. Mary. But so that's obviously the primary purpose. But we do try pretty hard to make sure that we're not significantly impacting the fishery.
Mm-hmm. So, do you anticipate any major issues? We talked a little bit about, well, if we have a drought, when you have to drop this water and start the main dam repair side of it, because you can't have a full pool dam on like you said, a dam that's compromised. So that potentially could affect the fish and that in the area. Anything else that biologists that you guys have worked with that have said might be some potential issues?
No, I mean, I know FWP has started to stock Fresno a little bit. So that's one of the things that they've started to do to try to offset some of that. But, for the most part, it seems like the primary focus that people are worried about at Fresno is the walleye fishery.
Mm-hmm. It's a great walleye lake. There's no doubt about it.
Yep.
And so, but that is getting taken into consideration, and they're going to kind of see how that goes. I assume there must be some sort of a plan to monitor how the walleye population is doing.
There is. Yep. There's a plan put together by FWP. I should know this. They just finalized it. It was either last year or the year before, with a advisory group, a local advisory group, and then they meet on it every April. Okay. We also go, and that's a good time for us because we have a better feel for how much snow we have, things like that we can actually give a more balanced answer on.
Okay. Well, Steve, we're going to take a quick break and talk about one of our great sponsors here. But when we come back, I want to ask you specifically. I got an email from one of our listeners here, so I want to ask specifically on that question, and then talk a little bit about Nelson and other reservoirs as well. So when we come back, we'll get into that right after this. This is the time of year that reminds us to be thankful and optimistic, and there is no place that fits that attitude more than Superior Hardwoods of Montana. See, they just love what they do and love to help folks like you by, as they put it, guiding you through the woods to find the perfect type of wood for your home construction or remodel job. Whether you're looking for those perfect wood floors, stunning paneling for your den, or just that perfect something that makes your house say, "Welcome home," every time you walk in the door. This time of the year, however, they really just want to say how much they appreciate all of their customers that allowed Superior Hardwoods of Montana to be part of their special project this year. They truly feel honored that all of you chose to do business with them, whether you contacted them directly or had your contractor come in to find exactly what you were looking for. Thank you so very much. For those of you that are thinking of doing some building or remodeling, they wanted me to remind you that they're here for you and stand ready to help get your special project underway, with sound advice to help you navigate the often stressful time of doing a project, to actually guiding you through the woods at their amazing warehouse located at 5120 Highway 93 South in Missoula, or on their website at superior-hardwoods.com. But for now, the team at Superior Hardwoods of Montana would just like to wish you all the best during this holiday season. May the joy and happiness of the season surround you and your loved ones. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and yours from our family here at Superior Hardwoods of Montana. That's Superior, hardwoods.com. And we're back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Steve Darlinton is my guest. He's with the Bureau of Reclamation. We're talking about reservoirs, primarily focusing on the east of the divide, reservoirs that are controlled by the Bureau of Reclamation. Talking a lot about Fresno, because that one is got a major project and dam repair and all that going on. So one of the emails that I got, well, I've got several that asked this question, and I think you probably have got it too, but they ask, are they going to place a bladder to increase storage? Now, I'm a what would epitomize a fisherman that focuses on fishing and not a lot about dam building or reservoir maintenance. So I'm not sure what that even means. So tell us, are you going to put a bladder in? And if you do, what the heck is that?
Yeah. So this is something that's been, milling around up there for a long time. They actually did a study in 2003. But the main purpose or the main thought process is Fresno has silted in because it's the Milk River. If you've ever seen the Milk River, it's a dirty river.
Yeah, it's called the Milk River for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's silted in almost 30,000 acre feet. So it was originally, I don't know, have the exact numbers, but it was right around 125,000 acre foot reservoir, and now it's down to just over 90.
Mm-hmm.
So we've lost a lot of storage within Fresno. So the thought process is, what is the most economical way to get that storage back? And dredging is very expensive and really hard to find from an environmental standpoint. We got to put that 30,000 acre feet of sediment somewhere else,
right?
Whether it's filling a coulee or something. So that really isn't a very good option. So the option that we've looked at is adding some sort of raise, whether it's an inflatable bladder or a concrete sill or something, to the spillway to add that storage back.
So how would that work? I guess I'm not quite following you here. How does that work to get the storage back? Are you talking about clearing an area, or what do you mean there?
No, I there's an important part of that. So our existing spillway is not gated. So as soon as the water hits elevation 2,575, it just flows over the spillway, and that just goes to the milk. So we have no way to control it basically above that elevation, unless it's a really large flood event.
Okay.
So, above that elevation is kind of our max elevation. The thought process is, by adding a bladder dam or something like that on that ungated spillway, we can add height to the reservoir.
Okay.
And gain that additional storage.
So how much would that give you, do you feel?
We've looked at it. The most we can do is 7 feet. That gets us back to our authorized purpose, which is as much as we can do. We still got to do a lot of reviews. So as part of that, we got some funding, some non-reimbursable funding, so it's not being paid for by irrigators, to study this last year. So we've actually looked into, we've done like a LiDAR where we flow in the reservoir, so we can get a more accurate estimate on how much sediment has been added. So that's been good. And then we're also looking into doing like the NEPA and the cultural and all the environmental, all the permitting stuff, so that once we get through these dam safety fixes, because we can't do anything until we fix the dam.
Right. Yeah. That has to be done paramount.
Yep. Once we get through those, we might be in a position to talk about this, and especially talk about it with more confidence. Because the main thing we don't know right now is what dam raise can we do, spillway raise can we do without impacting overtopping risks of the dam itself?
Right. Yeah, because that obviously you overtop a dam, you got serious issues.
Serious problems.
Yeah. So timing then, the actual drawdown is going to be by what, end of August? You should have that down to the level that you can then start the work on the dam. Am I right there?
Yep, August 15th.
August 15th. Then how long will that part take once you get started on that?
We kind of anticipate that to be right around a 10-week schedule.
Oh, really?
It's going to depend. The contractor has a lot of work to do next. Next year is a big year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to kind of depend on when they actually start. But that's our target date, to give them the time to do it. So it's probably, to December-ish is a good, estimate. Hopefully it's sooner than that.
Mm-hmm.
But most likely we're going to be at that 25-55 or lower throughout the winter.
Okay. And then now, obviously, that then as you're hauling all that stuff in or out, or all the things that you have to do, how is that going to affect getting around the reservoir, traffic, nearby Nelson, all that? Is there going to be quite a bit of disruption there?
There will be some for that specific work.
Mm-hmm.
So once the contractor starts that excavation next to the spillway, we're going to close the road along the dam. So folks coming from Havre, they typically use the boat ramp, that won't be impacted. But like the landowners on that side, the cabin lessees on that side, on the north side of the dam,
mm-hmm.
They're going to be impacted because they're going to have to go around to the north side of Havre and then out.
So they'll have to go kind of around the other way type thing.
Yep.
Then? Okay.
Yep, rather than going directly across the dam.
So they'll have access. It's just going to be a long way around to get their access. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. We're not shutting any boat ramps down that access the reservoir or anything like that. Yep.
Campgrounds, anything like that?
The tailwater fishing access site is closed. It'll be closed throughout. But no, everything else will be open and available.
Okay. So then you would get that done. Let's say that gets all completed around December or so of 2024. Then would that be when you guys would then look at the possibility of going to the next phase of putting the bladder in? Is that what we're talking about? Or is that bladder thing way down the road?
Pretty much. I mean, we got some concrete repairs that are part of this dam safety fix on the spillway also. So that will, these sorts of projects are big. So that will probably happen in 2026. So the earliest we'll look at like a bladder raise would be 2027, most likely.
2027. Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's a big question, and you answered it the best you can. I think that gives us a good idea of where we're at. So, given then where we're at, if all goes according to plan, by say December or so, then that next season, so then we'd be into 2025. If all goes well and we don't have a bad drought or that, then we should see pretty much normal water levels back. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. For this year, in the immediate time, like for ice fishing coming up, which depending on the weather should be fairly soon. We're at the mercy of the weather there. Will that be affected at all? Anything between now and August when the big work starts? Are you anticipating anything that would affect recreation on Nelson?
No.
Okay.
Nope. Not on Fresno. And Nelson
on Fresno, rather.
Yeah. Nelson's looking really good.
Okay. Yeah. So I think anything else on Fresno that we haven't touched on that's going to be working on?
No, I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So then let's talk about Nelson. Anything going on or planned for Nelson?
No, Nelson's looking really good. it's pretty full right now.
Yeah.
We had a really good spring because there was a lot of prairie snowpack that we got to capture in Nelson. And so that helps. And because it's the downstream dam in this project, Fresno is definitely like that's the one that determines when irrigation is shut off most of the time. And I suspect that'll be the case again next year.
So will all this this stuff that goes on in Fresno, will that affect what happens to Nelson, or will it affect other waterways around the area?
It's going to affect Nelson some. You know, for all the irrigation downstream of Nelson, we're going to try to lean on Nelson so we can release less out of Fresno, things like that. So that'll be the main impact. Will be trying to eke out as much irrigation as we can with those two reservoirs working together.
Have you got any estimates of how much lower Nelson might get to, you know, kind of, as you say, lean on it and have to provide more of what Fresno can't provide because of the construction? Is there any estimates there?
It's too early. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, we really need to see what the winter does. I mean, it's 40 mile an hour.
There's a lot that depends
yesterday.
on that, doesn't it? Yeah.
So it's been pretty tough up there for making ice.
And again, we'll just have to see. I think some colder weather is on the horizon, but that all depends. What about as we go around the rest of the parts of eastern Montana that you guys can control? Any other projects coming up? Any other things that you see there?
Not significant ones that'll impact the reservoirs themselves. Tiber, and most of those again are just it's all kind of drought.
Right.
That's where they're at as far as being full. I know Tiber's slightly below average for this time of year, but those are the big stuff. As far as large projects, there really isn't anything that we see coming down the pike yet.
Okay.
That will impact recreation.
We're going to take one more quick break, and then when we come back, I wanted to spend just a little time. I know I'm taking a lot of your time here, but I want to spend just a little time on trying to look into the future as much as we can, and maybe just get some of the tops of the trees of down the road if there's anything you see there. So we'll be right back with that right after this. The other day, I was out doing a little shopping and saw a fellow pull up in his side-by-side ATV, and it had a Boss snowplow mounted on the front of it. I just had to stop and tell him how amazed I was to see the perfect-sized Boss snowplow mounted on that like it absolutely belonged there. I said I had no idea that Boss made a snowplow that fit so perfectly on an ATV. He said, yeah, me neither. But I went into Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, Montana, and told them I really needed something that could help me use my side-by-side to plow smaller driveways and sidewalks. And I'll be darned if they didn't have the perfect thing. It does an amazing job and has given my snowplowing business the perfect tool. The folks at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer mounted it on my side-by-side and showed me how to make that thing work like nothing I'd ever seen. Well, folks, that's Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer for you. They always know how to help anyone get the job done, whether it's the perfect Boss snowplow that obviously fits on any kind of rig, to the best dump trailers and truck beds. Folks, I just can't think of a better place to send you to. They have a full service department and can even help you get financing so you can get what you need right away. I hope you're having a great and safe winter out there, and if you're not, remember Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer, because chances are they have just what you need to make this winter the best you've ever had. Go see them at 5680 Expressway in Missoula, Montana, or on the web at rmtte.com. That's Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer, rmtte.com. Go see them and have the best winter ever. Back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast, Steve Darlington's my guest. He's with the Bureau of Reclamation, talking about all the reservoirs, especially focusing on eastern Montana, northeast Montana. And we've spent a lot of time talking about Fresno because that's a major project. And Steve, thanks again so much for all the time you're taking here. Let's look into the future as best you can. And again, I understand that a lot of this is all hard to predict because you never know what Mama Nature's going to throw at us. But what's the outlook for all these projects and that going, further into the future? Are we looking like once Fresno's done, we're going to have just kind of business as usual, or are there some other big projects planned for way down the road?
As far as the state goes, we talked about Canyon Ferry a little bit, but Willow Creek over there in the sun is probably the only other one that we're just in the starting phases of a dam safety project there for that spillway.
What's going to happen there at Willow Creek?
Well, that's the part we don't know. We know that there's a issue due to potential erosion of the spillway if it operates.
Okay.
As far as what the alternative, when you're asking like way down the road, we're talking 5+ years. But
wait a minute,
that's the only one.
You can't predict the future, Steve?
Not yet.
That isn't in your job description yet.
No.
So you're saying with Willow Creek, potentially there could be some issues where you're going to have to do quite a bit of work there, or what?
Yep. Potentially, it's going to depend on what the alternative is and how they decide to remedy that.
Okay. How about around the rest of the state? Any other big time projects or things that you can give us a glimpse at as we look down the future?
Not really. Some of our big projects just are finishing up. A Yellowtail, we just finished up a rewind there, and then the intake diversion dam, the fish bypass project was completed, and so we've kind of finished a lot of those larger projects that we were working on, and the upcoming ones are primarily focused on the Fresno and St. Mary. St. Mary has a lot of work coming up.
Can you tell us a little bit about what St. Mary might have coming up? I know you do a lot of that over there, but
nope, I do actually.
Okay.
So the diversion dam is, again, it was built 1910 to 1915. It's very old, very dilapidated. So we're replacing that, and then we're adding fish-friendly features for bull trout. So a screen and bypass so that they can get over the dam.
Okay.
So that's the other large project coming up. That actually should be hitting the street for bids next week, hopefully.
Okay. And when would that anticipate that would get underway to get started on that project?
We hopefully will get dirt moving this fall, and then that's a 4-year project, primarily because the construction season is so short.
Yeah, real short
right
up there.
Right there at the base of Glacier. So, yep.
Well, how about as far as if we look at all that we have, and we are truly blessed in Montana that we have so many great things and all that, and the health of these projects, as you pointed out, a lot of them are pretty old, and you guys have been trying to catch up and get those things rebuilt, redone, and all that. But if you compare us to, say, other states around the country and that, how do we rate? Are we in pretty good shape, do you think?
Yeah, the way reclamation is, and there's a lot of reclamation facilities throughout the West. A lot of them are getting old, but they've been maintained pretty well throughout this whole time frame. And yeah, I would say we're in a pretty good spot as far as maintaining our facilities. But they are old, and the problem with replacing old things is that it's expensive.
Yeah.
And
Expensive, and you never know what you get into till you start digging into it.
And that's something that, we're seeing, and obviously that goes to the irrigation partners, seeing that as well, because they pay the majority of those costs for those facilities.
So, lastly, so as far as, where you guys get your funding and how that can or cannot be affected, the irrigation folks, they pay what the majority of all this maintenance and that sort of stuff. For these big projects, how does that get paid for then? Is that comes out of the federal budget, or is that still all just the farmers and ranchers that have to pay into the irrigation stuff?
It really differs based on projects. Mm-hmm. So, for say the Sun River, for example, they pay 100% of those costs for Willow Creek and Fishkin. But if it's a dam safety fix, like something we're talking about at Willow Creek or what's happening at Fresno, the feds pick up 85%.
Okay.
And then the local stakeholders, Fresno is a good example. So the local stakeholders for Fresno, which is only the irrigators municipalities, pay 15%. But that's still a big number, that's 11.5 million.
Ooh. So is that like a SID kind of thing that gets put on to those stakeholders then? How does that get charged to them?
Yeah, we have contracts, water contracts with those folks, so and it goes through that. Okay. And we do offer pretty good repayment terms as far as no interest. And some of them, especially for like a Fresno, that's a big dollar. They have up to 50 years to pay. So there is some help there, but it's obviously a big thing to kind of encumber your farm for that long.
Sure.
When you start thinking about it.
So us fishermen that are just out there having a good time fishing, and all this stuff gets done and paid for, we get off pretty easy, don't we? We don't, unless we're a farmer, we don't really have to pay for any of that, do we?
As far as funding goes for the actual work, but I'm sure the local communities, slightly disagree that the recreation obviously brings in a lot of money.
Absolutely.
And it's when we start messing with that, there's people's lives that are impacted by that.
Right. Well, and that's where it comes in. Is you're exactly right. We get off pretty easy as far as not having to really pay for the out of pocket into it, but we get hit hard, especially like you say, sporting goods stores, hotels, bait shops, on and on and on and on. If fishing's bad, that's bad on them. So yeah, that's a really good point.
And it's important to balance those. Yep.
Is there any kind of input that you look for from the public? Is there anything that any of our listeners can do or that to help, or do you need information from us? You probably get more information than you want to from us. Anything like that we can do? Yeah.
We participate in that yearly meeting that FWP hosts, usually in April. That's a good spot for us. We have a web page. I think my phone number might be on there. So that's an option. And then, as we go through, for the Fresno stuff, we're all through the public comment period. We went through NEPA and all that.
Sure.
But for like the spillway raise, we'll go through all that again. And we will have public comment periods and all that sort of stuff so people can look into it once we have a better idea of what the parameters of that sort of thing is going to be.
And does that make a difference, do you think, when public starts giving a lot of comments and thoughts about it? I mean, is that something you guys really take into consideration? Because one of the things I always hear is, they want public comment, but they're not going to listen. Yeah, no, absolutely. We have to look at those comments and oftentimes respond to them. Yeah, and I imagine you get decent ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We enjoy it. It's good. So we
All right. And if people after listening to this, if they have questions for you, can they email you? Is it best to go through the webpage? How best to let people get a hold of you?
I'm actually gonna look right now.
Yeah.
I don't remember what our web.
Do you mind if I put your email, or would you rather not? Because they can
I
always
will,
get a hold of me, and I can pass it on. So
for sure. I will send you the link.
okay.
Yeah, all my stuff's right there.
Yeah.
So we got a webpage for Fresno. Same with St. Mary.
Okay.
All my info is right at the bottom of the page.
All right. Well, then I'll put that in the podcast description there, folks, and just keep it civil and nice, because he's trying to do the best he can here, folks. So, but yeah, if you got questions about, hey, I heard you say this, but I didn't quite understand it. Yeah. Send it to Steve, and when he gets a chance, he can. And of course, Manny is going to be giving you my email, folks, and that's always a great way to get a hold of any of our guests, is just email me, and then I'm happy to pass it on too. So we'll do it that way. Steve, I want to thank you so much for all your time today and explaining all this, especially because some of it gets way over my head. So you did a great job in explaining how all this works. And hopefully we can have you back and get a little update as things go along there at Fresno as well.
Sounds good.
All right. Steve Darlington, thank you so much for all you do for us fishermen and for the folks all across the state of Montana. And those of you, again, if you've got comments, questions, things like that, just go to the podcast description, grab those links, and do your clicking and that. Until then, be safe out there, have fun, and we'll talk to you next time here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock, high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. And by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.